The story of Jeffrey Epstein, well, it's a really disturbing tangle of wealth, power, and absolutely horrific crimes. To even begin to understand the fallout, you've got to have a clear, factual foundation. So let's break down what the public record actually tells us about one of the most notorious figures of our time.
Here's how we're going to do it. First, we'll look at who Epstein really was. Then, we'll trace his bizarre rise to power and examine that infamous 2008 plea deal. After that, we'll cover his final arrest and mysterious death and wrap up with why this story is, believe it or not, still unfolding today.
All right, so Section 1. Who was Jeffrey Epstein? To get a handle on this case, you first have to understand this massive contradiction at its core, the gap between his public image and his criminal reality. On the one hand, you have this kind of perception. Back in 2002, Donald Trump called him a terrific guy. This quote really captures that high-flying, well-connected persona that Epstein was so careful to project to the world. He was a regular in these elite circles. And then you have this, the stark, official, horrifying reality. The public record doesn't just define him as a financier. It defines him as a convicted child sex offender, a serial rapist, and a human trafficker. The whiplash between that last slide and this one, well, that's the key to the whole story.
So here's the most crucial point. Epstein was running a huge criminal enterprise basically in plain sight, all while surrounded by some of the most powerful people on the planet. And during that time, he orchestrated the abuse of over 1,000 victims. The big question is, how was that even possible? Well, the answer really lies in how he got all that power in the first place.
Okay, so let's dig into his career and see how this all came to be. Section 2. How did Epstein build the fortune and the influence that ended up protecting him for so long?
His career path was, let's just say it wasn't typical. He starts out as a teacher at the super elite Dalton School, even though he didn't have a college degree. Then he gets fired from there, but somehow jumps to the investment bank Bear Stearns, apparently using connections from the school. He's asked to leave there too, but just a few years later, by 1988, he's running his own firm that only manages money for billionaires. It's an incredibly fast and kind of mysterious climb to the top. And this right here is the key to that climb, his relationship with Leslie Wexner, the billionaire CEO behind brands like Victoria's Secret. Now, Wexner didn't just hire Epstein. He gave him full power of attorney over his massive fortune. I mean, that's total control over his money. This relationship was the main engine behind Epstein's wealth and his status. And it gave him this terrifyingly effective cover, letting him pose as a talent scout for Victoria's Secret to lure and manipulate young women. All that wealth and power became absolutely critical when his crimes first started coming to light. So let's look at the legal bombshell that first sparked national outrage, the 2008 non-prosecution agreement. Just look at this comparison. It's night and day. On the left, you see what federal prosecutors originally put together, a 53-page indictment. This could have sent him to prison for a very, very long time. And on the right, that's what he actually got. He pleaded guilty to just 2 much lesser state charges. And all those serious federal charges, they just disappeared. The gap between what could have happened and what did happen is just staggering. And the sentence itself, it was almost unbelievable. He served just 13 months, and not in a state prison, but in a county jail. And for most of that sentence, he was allowed to leave on work release for up to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. This was a privilege that actually violated the sheriff's own rules for sex offenders. So why? Why did he get what so many people call the deal of a lifetime? Well, the U.S. attorney who approved it, a man named Alexander Acosta, he later reportedly explained his decision by saying he was told that Epstein belonged to intelligence and was essentially untouchable. And that just added this whole other layer of mystery and conspiracy to the entire case. But that wasn't the end of the story. Not by a long shot. Let's move on to what seemed like the final chapter. His arrest in 2019 and the deeply, deeply controversial circumstances of his death. So, in July 2019, more than a decade after that sweet plea deal, Epstein was arrested again. But this time, the charges were federal sex trafficking, and the judge denied him bail. He was called a danger to the public and a flight risk. For a moment there, it really seemed like justice might finally be coming. But then, on the night of August 10th, 2019, this cascade of failures happens at the federal jail. His cellmate gets transferred out. The 2 guards who were supposed to be watching his unit fell asleep and later admitted to faking the records. And, crucially, cameras right outside his cell supposedly malfunctioned. I mean, any one of these is troubling, but all of them together, it fueled widespread disbelief. So, you have to ask the question, suicide or something else? The official ruling from the medical examiner was suicide by hanging, but that whole series of protocol breaches, combined with just how high-profile this prisoner was, it sparked intense public skepticism and all sorts of conspiracy theories that are still going strong today.
And that brings us to our last section, because even with Epstein gone, this story is so far from over. His death didn't close the book on this. No, in a lot of ways, it just started a brand new, very messy chapter. The fallout has just been massive. His longtime partner in crime, Ghislaine Maxwell, she was convicted and sentenced for her role in the whole trafficking ring. The courts have started unsealing thousands of pages of documents, publicly naming many of his powerful associates. A special compensation fund has paid out millions to his victims, and the search for his other co-conspirators and the powerful systems that protected him for so long, that's still going. At the end of the day, the Jeffrey Epstein case forces every one of us to confront a really unsettling question. It's a story that exposes these terrifying fault lines in our society, and it leaves all of us asking, what really happens when immense wealth and unchecked power collide head-on with the pursuit of justice?